and welcome to today's Space News Online Newsmaker Forum presented by Northrop Grumman. My name is Brian Berger, and I'm the Deputy Editor at Space News, and our guest today is NASA Deputy Administrator Lori Garver. Lori, as a lot of you probably know, is a bred-in-the-bone space policy wonk. She worked for Senator John Glenn. She has a master's degree from the George Washington University Space Policy Institute. Was it called that then?
No.
It wasn't called that then.
My degree was in science, technology, and public policy.
And you were a student of Dr. John Logsdon at the time, of course. And she also ran the National Space Society for nearly a decade. During the Clinton years, she worked at NASA, rising to the position of Associate Administrator for Policy and Plans. And starting around 2001, she put her knowledge of NASA to work as an aerospace industry consultant. And in 2008, you put your consulting on hold to go work for the campaign of Senator Hillary Clinton. Later joined the Obama campaign. And just 3 short weeks from now, she and NASA Administrator Charles Bolden will be celebrating their first year in office. And it has been quite a year. NASA's 2011 budget, which is currently before Congress, lays out a new direction for the space agency. It's one that cancels the moon-focused constellation program in favor of a less destination-driven human spaceflight program that features a new relationship with the private sector and billions of dollars worth of new investment in new technologies. The new vision has not met with universal acclaim. We're going to talk about some of those reasons why today. Kind of where NASA goes from here. But first, just a bit of technical housekeeping. If you have any technical issues during today's webcast on your end, please refer to the confirmation email that you should have received in the last 24 hours and visit the help page. So with that, we'll get to the questions. We got lots of great questions. Thanks to everybody who's sent them in. You can continue to send them in during the webcast here today. So Lori, you just returned from Europe, where you were attending the Berlin Air Show, and I believe you stopped by Paris on the way back to meet with the head of the European Space Agency to talk about opportunities for potential future cooperation. How did that go?
Well, we had a really productive trip to Europe. Europe is one of the European countries are obviously one of our best partners on the space station, and space and earth science, even some aeronautics work, and so I did. We had hoped to get there earlier to talk to our partners about not only our hopes to extend the space station, but our plans for human spaceflight to help really have them understand this capabilities-driven budget that we have proposed that you mentioned. So we had very productive meetings in Berlin with a number of the space leaders, including the Germans, signed an MOU to extend the operations phase of the GRACE mission. In Paris, met with Jean-Jacques Dordain, the head of ESA, as you mentioned, as well as the head of the French Space Agency, CNES, and Mr. Descata. And then we went to the United Nations, addressed the COPUOS, the Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space in Vienna. They're really focused on sustainability and having space applications help contribute better to world issues and societal needs, which is something that the President feels very focused on in our future budget as well. So it was a great opportunity to really explain our program to the international community, not just the Europeans, but all who were attending the Paris Air Show and the UN meeting from many, many nations, and also hear from them how they would like to participate going forward should our programs be adopted by Congress.
Sure. Now, I guess I'm wondering whether NASA today, kind of in contrast to during the tenure of Mike Griffin and even Sean O'Keefe before that, is willing to put Europe on the so-called critical path when it comes to space transportation.
Well, this critical path issue, to me, we talked about it quite a bit there, and I believe it's just strange for us to say we wouldn't have non-U.S. Participants on a critical path when, in fact, the very plan that we are currently under has us counting on the Russians for our space transportation for crew and cargo for some number of years. So while we may have said we wouldn't put people on that critical path, we clearly had them on that critical path. So are we interested in having critical needs be carried out by our international partners more so than the last administration? I think that is absolutely true. We are recognizing the situation we're in. We are recognizing that, in fact, space is a global endeavor. We have hundreds of partnerships around the world, and so space transportation being an area where obviously we are proposing to manage this in a commercial way would keep that in the U.S. So our people who don't, I think, agree with our plan have been saying the U.S. won't have any capability, whereas we believe we're really putting U.S. capability back in the space transportation arena by our proposals to seriously fund commercial cargo and crew.
One of the international criticisms of the Constellation program was that the international participation seemed like something of an afterthought. Now that seemed to kind of turn around a little bit. There was a big symposium, if you will, at the Reagan Center. I think you probably participated in that. But initially that was kind of the slight, and it looked like the internationals were basically being approached to add on to a U.S. Architecture, if you will. Could you identify one or two areas where we might see the internationals contribute to the exploration plans that NASA is starting to articulate?
Well, one of the most rewarding parts of the discussions we had with our partners, not only in Europe but in other times, has been how much they have counted on U.S. leadership, especially in human spaceflight and human space exploration. And they understand that, in fact, the Constellation program was not something that was sustainable going forward. So they are very happy, and our new program proposal is very well received. They understand and recognize that, in fact, we need to be pushing these technologies so we can go forward faster and farther. But they also, I think, are looking for ways they can cooperate earlier than they could have with Constellation. A couple examples to answer your question would be we have, as you outlined in your opening, we have not given up on the moon as a destination. And for instance, the Germans are very interested in a robotic mission to the moon that could be one of our precursor or flagship programs. In addition, I think there, of course, are plans to cooperate with the French on Mars robotic missions that could include future sample return missions. So we really believe that the serious nature of, as the Augustine report outlined, the benefits of flexible path, one of those is the way you can partner with your international community, because we don't have to take the lead in everything. We could put an instrument on a mission that others have, and that is something that we will look to be doing as we go forward, should our plans be accepted by Congress.
We're starting to get questions in from everybody in the audience, and here's one that just came in. How have you and the NASA administrator worked to convince your NASA colleagues that your new direction deserves to be supported?
The team at NASA, of course, is 18,000 people just as civil servants, and beyond that, I consider our team much broader. The contractor workforce that a large percentage of our funding goes for. And we recognize that change is hard, and I think we have had a lot of communication from us directly, as well as trying to communicate more effectively with the leaders at the centers so that they can better explain their programs. The opportunities that, should we again be allowed to proceed with the budget plans, how they would fit in. We have a number of people who have been going out to the centers. Bobby Braun, our new chief technologist, has done an amazing job really showing people what the future could hold. It's obviously a difficult challenge when we're in a position, Constellation is going forward, and that is very clear, and new programs cannot start. So we're trying to put as much definition as we can to a new program, recognizing that you can't actually start it. So that's a challenging time.
Sure. What odds do you give to a NASA getting a budget this year versus a CR? Does that potentially put NASA in this prolonged period of limbo where you can neither really fully start new programs nor fully terminate existing programs.
I'm not a gambler or an odds person, and I would urge people to recognize that NASA does have a very large percentage of its programs that are ongoing and providing the continuous fabulous benefit that we have done for 50 years now. Earth sciences, aeronautics, space science, and human spaceflight really not affected by this concern. We know going forward we have proposed increases to some of those programs, but the changes are not so dramatic that there is a lot of transition in those programs. The space shuttle, we're very focused on flying out safely. So we are looking at the exploration portfolio and recognizing that, in fact, there could be change. It's not definite. I feel like the chances, certainly of a CR for a few months, are quite high. We believe that the Congress will get a budget, and that we hope that by then we will have been able to explain our program well enough that we're going forward in a way that is very positive for the future of human spaceflight and for NASA. We truly believe a very unique aspect of what is going on now with this debate is that we are all in good faith arguing over what is the best way to have the most robust human space exploration plan we can have. And I recall a time in the 90s when that was not the debate. The debate was, should we even be doing this or not? Yeah. So in many ways, I feel so good that honest people can disagree. Not everyone has the same amount of information, the same kind of information. There's disinformation, but people really want, you're not seeing this argument, we shouldn't be going beyond low Earth orbit, or we shouldn't be expanding space station, or frankly, we shouldn't even be having the private sector work more effectively with government. Those aren't the arguments we're having. It's a very difficult thing of canceling a large program that's
Sure.
been hard. And I do want to add the caveat that we are not proposing at this time to cancel all of Constellation. We have, as you know, amended the program as of April 15th and looking to modify the Orion spacecraft to be a escape vehicle for space station.
What's the rationale for having an escape-only version of Orion, given that on the one hand, U.S. astronauts will still go up on a Soyuz and presumably can come back down in that Soyuz, and on the other hand, if you're going to be buying commercial crew services, it doesn't seem like that much of a stretch to then rely on those vehicles at station to serve as an emergency escape vehicle.
Well, we believe it is aligned with our capabilities-driven budget. A couple of the flagships, certainly the early ones, were things that could have technologies like we will be developing on a crew escape version of Orion if we're allowed to do that. We also feel that the commercial companies, really to give them the best chance of success, they need to focus on those things that there are future markets for. And the future markets are for transportation. It's a government unique requirement for station keeping and for the kinds of things that have to be developed for that activity are not things that if we're able to have them covered in the escape vehicle, that would need to be something that they include in their work. So it could allow an acceleration of the commercial capability.
Are you saying that you're looking at this Orion lifeboat, for lack of a better term, to have a space station reboost capability as something that it offers?
Station keeping could mean a lot of things. Certainly the crew escape, the ability to be there full time is not something that would then be required by the commercial.
Is that a big requirement to relieve the commercial providers of? The 6-month stay time in orbit?
We have heard from various providers different things of those who felt it was an added capability that they would not be developing for other customers, so that it would allow them to speed up for some.
Not a freebie. They don't see it as a freebie. Right. The interesting thing about commercial crew and the Orion lifeboat, of course, is NASA seems to be kind of come to terms with restructuring Lockheed Martin's Orion contract to direct it towards the development of a lifeboat capability. Am I correct in that assumption?
I think that's all still being discussed.
Okay, still being discussed.